This is Grace with Graceful Living. Today I'm going to talk about how you can use earthworms to recycle the food that you do not want. A while ago, I did an episode with Brian Heighthouse and showed his worm factory, and now I'm going to show how I began my most recent worm factory. In August, I went to someone's house and got some worms from his worm factory. Here you can see him gathering them here. I like to get the worms from someone else because then I know the worms are acclimated to our environment. I set up this worm factory for myself. I bought it here, and it's one of those ones that are manufactured and the boxes fit right on top of each other, so it's easy to add layers. Here I am putting my new worms in the worm factory. I didn't have cocoa coir, which I like to use, so I took some cut up old coconuts and I put their insides in the worm factory. I thought it was better than nothing that way. Here you can see I'm trying to evenly distribute the worms between the coconut. I like to also have a layer of wet newspaper on the bottom of the layer because that way the worms will not be tempted to get out of the worm factory because there are little holes in the bottom. I also shred up some newspaper, which they like to eat as well. This is another way to get rid of your old newspaper when you don't know what to do with it. I will also add a layer of wet newspaper on the top. This is in October, or a few months later, as you can see. And you can see I still have the wet newspaper on the top. I'm just adding in some food waste here. Worms like pretty much everything except for onions, garlic. They don't particularly like citrus fruit. You can even give them fruit with maybe a tiny bit of mold in it. It's best to keep the food organic, as you will ultimately be using the compost in your garden, and you would probably want your garden to be organic as well. I also have some ice cubes here because it can get pretty hot in Hawaii, and so it's just nice for them to rub up against some ice cubes. So I add some ice cubes, banana peels to the mix. Now, if you're plant-based like me, and I'm vegan, there's pretty much nothing that you eat that the worms won't eat. But if you're vegetarian or something, the worms don't really eat animal products except maybe eggshells, so you gotta be careful not to put things too high in fat and too oily as well. And the worms generally don't like spicy foods. The worms also like coffee grounds, but maybe not too much of it because it's a little bit acidic. So I do have some in here, and I'm gonna add some to the mix. But I'll just put all my fruit and veggie scraps in here. Sometimes, like in this instance, I have pieces of bread that I also put in there too, and they will break that down as well. But be careful not to put anything plastic in your worm bin or anything that's colored, except for newsprint, because you don't want anything inorganic in there that might be toxic in your garden. And they generally won't eat plastic or break it down. Some of the containers these days that are paper are actually coated in plastic, so you have to be careful. I generally only put newsprint and brown paper bag that's shredded into the worm bin. I like to put the food, as you can see here, in the four corners of the worm bin. So here I'm just lifting up the newspaper so I can get another corner and dumping some more food in with ice cubes. Banana peels, bread. I also have some pieces of lettuce that I don't eat. There may be some other critters in your worm factory as well. You just have to be careful not to put too much fruit in it, or you could get fruit flies, which has happened to me before. But there may be other types of critters, and I wouldn't worry too much about it as long as you still see the worms. So worms are great because they provide a lot of services. their breakdown product that they provide, which I will show in a different video, is really great for your garden. And also you can get some worm tea that I showed in Brian's video, and that's a great natural pesticide that's non-toxic for your garden, but it's good to control pests with it. Okay, now I have something else I'm going to add. I'm going to add a new layer to my vermicompost, and I probably could have done this sooner than I did. I did this just this month in November. I'm just checking for worms here, making sure they're still doing well. And I can see some. And so then I'm going to just add a layer. And I just put a bunch of newspaper in there. Shredded newspaper, that is. Into the tray. And then I put newspaper at the bottom, and I put newspaper at the top again. Unfortunately, some of this coconut that I got from my old coconuts isn't quite as nice as the coco coir, but it still serves a purpose, and my worms have been okay, so I'm not too worried about it. This is my other layer, and the worms will eat the newspaper, so I don't really have to provide extra food, but I will provide some other greens and other things that just in the corners that I'm not going to eat. I'm still putting more stuff here. Banana peels. I ate a ton of bananas, so I always have those. I'm not going to put too much. You shouldn't overwhelm your worms with too much food, and always try to break it down as much as you can because they don't really have teeth, so it will take them a very long time to break things down. So the smaller you make the things you put in the worm factory, the easier it is for the worms to break it down. The great thing about these worms is you're on a low-fat, whole-food, plant-based diet, which is optimum for your health. Basically, any waste that you have in terms of food will be good for the worms as well, and that makes things pretty easy. Vermicomposting is a great, easy way to recycle your food scraps. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. Please go to graceinhawaii.com for more information.